Ho ho ho, and bienvenidos to Pica Poco Kitchen. Today we're making buñuelos. Vámonos. All throughout the world, we all enjoy some form of fried dough. And this is the case of buñuelos, which we have to thank Turkey, Morocco, and Egypt for introducing Spain to it, which later was brought to Mexico. Buñuelos were very popular in the convents where nuns would make them, and there is even register of this by one of the most famous nuns ever, Sor Juana Inés de la Cruz, a poet who wrote about them. She called them puñuelos or pañuelos, which means handkerchief, because the dough is spread so thinly that it resembles a piece of linen or cotton. Other people believe that the name might come from medieval Latin, the word bungo, which means bulb, in French beignet, which means that it inflates while fried. No matter the shape or form you enjoy it, this is a delicious treat. There are many different ways to enjoy it. Some people like to dust them in sugar. In Oaxaca specifically, they dust it with red sugar, which is very appropriate for the season. In other places, they enjoy it with cheese, like in Chihuahua, or like today's, they are enjoyed with a honey made out of piloncillo and guava, which for me, it's the winner. These are so simple to make with ingredients that you probably already have at home. This is just like any other occasion, an excuse for us Mexicans to share love through food in every celebration that we have. Buñuelos are very popular throughout the season. You can find them in town fairs, in kermeses, in posadas, in parties, everywhere. The smell definitely calls for holiday. And I think you won't regret knowing about them, making them, and sharing them with everybody that you love. Let's get to it. They're very simple, I promise.
We will start with 2 cups of flour that I've already sifted. And to that, we are adding 1 teaspoon of baking powder. As always, we need to add a pinch of salt and 2 tablespoons of sugar. Now it's time to combine all your dry ingredients. And with your fingers, you are going to make a little well in the middle, and that's where we're going to add the wet ingredients. And those will be 1 large egg. I've already beaten it because I find that way it's easier to incorporate. Also, 1 tablespoon of melted butter that I left to cool down. We don't want any scrambled eggs. Also, 1 teaspoon of vanilla. Using a fork or your fingers, you're going to little by little add the dry ingredients into the wet and mix well. At this point, you don't have enough liquid to make a dough, but we do want to make sure that every little bit of the flour gets some of the wet ingredients. Keep mixing until everything resembles and feels like some sort of wet sand. Now, in order to make our dough, we need to incorporate the water. But for that to work, we need to start with warm or tepid water. I have here 3/4 of a cup of water. I am not going to use it all. The second tip you need is to use 2 or 3 tablespoons of water at a time. This way, you will have better control on the amount of water for your dough. It's very easy to go over with the water. If you use the tablespoon method, then you won't have to fix your dough or you won't have to waste it. Keep adding your splashes of water and kneading your dough until everything binds together. You will know when to stop once it doesn't feel dry and is also not sticky. That would be a indicator that you added too much water. Like I always tell you, there are many factors that contribute to the amount of water that you're going to need for your doughs, like temperature, humidity, etc. So, using the tablespoon will definitely help you achieve an even consistency every time you do this kind of dough. In the end, I think that I use probably less than 1/4 of a cup, but it's always a good start to have the 3/4 cup. Now that my dough is all binded, we need to start kneading it. So I'm going to transfer it to my working area. Sprinkle just a teeny bit of flour just to help you in the beginning of this process. And this is a step you cannot skip. Remember that kneading the dough helps you activate the gluten. That makes the protein chains that you're gonna need in your dough to give it structure and elasticity. As I told you in the beginning, making buñuelos required to make a very thin layer of dough and stretch it. If you don't need enough, you are gonna have tears in your buñuelos, and we are trying to avoid it. So knead your dough for between 10 to 15 minutes until you can notice the texture soft, smooth, and strong enough. Now that it's not sticky and smooth, I'm gonna shape it into a ball and let it rest. This is another important step. We need to let the gluten relax and hydrate. So for now, we have time to make the syrup. I'm gonna start by dissolving 230 grams of piloncillo in 2.5 cups of water. If you can't find piloncillo, you can use brown sugar. I will spice it up with 1 cinnamon stick, 2 pieces of clove, and I also like to add some anise. So you could use a star anise, or like in my case, 1/4 teaspoon of anise seeds. I like to use the anise seeds because I don't have many uses for them, so this is a good excuse to use them. I also have here 6 guava that I cut in quarters. You can add them, just clean them up, cut the ends, and chop them into pieces and add them in with the little seeds in. It doesn't matter because we are going to pass it through a sieve later. So let's let all the sugar dissolve and the guavas to cook in this delicious spiced water. This is a basic recipe for the syrup, but every household has its own version of it. So feel free to adjust to make it sweeter or less sweet, maybe even add some citrus peel or apples or a different fruit. It's really all up to you. I really like the guava because it brings some sort of acidity and brightness that it's very fitting to the rest of the flavors. We're gonna let this simmer and then boil. Keep an eye on your fruit because you don't want the guavas to become mash. So just continuously stir and check on your fruit. You don't want to be far away from your pot. Also, this can get really sticky if you let it boil and you go away for a second. So if you really need to leave the stove unattended, don't forget to put your spoon on top of it so to avoid spillage. As you can see here, all my guavas are nicely cooked and the seeds are coming off, which is great because then I can easily use a spoon to remove them before I add them back to my syrup. Right here, my guavas are ready and my syrup has begun to thicken in a little bit. So this is gonna be a good time for me to remove the spices, the little guava seeds, and everything. So I'm going to pass it through a sieve and then bring it back to the stove. Here is my clear and clean syrup. Now, this is a personal thing. I like to add the guavas back without the seeds that I remove with a spoon because I really like how they give you a different texture when you're eating your buñuelos, but this is personal. Now, if you don't want them there, you can still set them aside and eat them on their own, maybe on top of ice cream or by themselves, or even make a jam out of them. They are very, very yummy. Now, again, it's up to you if you want to continue simmering your syrup to make it thicker. I like to keep it this way because I also don't want to compromise the guavas and turn them into a mush. So I'm gonna stop right here and keep it warm with the lid on in the stove so when my buñuelos are ready, I can enjoy them. Now that my dough is relaxed enough, I like to divide it and shape it. I normally do 12 buñuelos out of this amount of dough. So here are my little bolitas. I'm gonna put them aside and let's start shaping them. I start by making a little disc with a rolling pin, trying to keep it as circular as I can, flipping it around and rolling it with my hand, and then just going one direction only with the rolling pin. I also try to follow the curvature of the circle using the rolling pin, and I also like to test the flexibility of the dough by pulling it with my hands just to make sure that everything is in order. I make it as big as I can with the rolling pin before I start stretching. At this point, I'm getting to a place where I'm gonna feel comfortable, and you can tell that it's already getting thin, but we need to make it even thinner. And for that, I will be using the help of a pan. Using a pan facing down and a wet tea towel, I will stretch my dough. So here I have it. Just lay it on your table and cover it with the wet tea towel. Now I'm gonna transfer the dough on top of it. Because the tea towel is wet, my dough won't stick to it. So just lay it, choose a pan that it's big enough for your dough. If your dough is smaller, use a smaller pan. And I use one hand to hold the center of my dough, and with my fingers, I go around the dough, stretching it just a little bit at a time in every direction. Be very gentle, but if you kneaded your dough right, you won't have to worry about it breaking. This is a very similar thing that happens when you do a apple streusel. And as you can see, if I put my hand under the dough, you can see through it. And that is it. Now it's ready to be fried. And now, very dangerously, I brought my oil to the table to show you. And then I go and spoil it all by doing something stupid like laying my dough all wonky. But don't worry if that happens to you. With a chopstick, you can fix it really easily. It is important to keep the temperature of your oil hot. That's why mine obviously is not bubbling enough, but the important thing is for you to see how it's done and how easily you can fix it in case you do something like I did. Using your chopstick and another tool that you feel comfortable with, carefully spin it a little bit around and flip it when you think it's ready, not like I did just then. Be patient and careful and flip them around once they have hardened, And you can take them out when they are nice and golden. Have a plate with paper towels ready to catch each one. Once they are dry enough of oil, you can transfer them to a second plate so you can continue using the paper towels. And this is how they look once they come out. As you can see, this one was a little bit wrinkly, but it's okay. And since you are going to be shaping and frying one at a time, it is important to be careful. So if you have fur or skin babies around, keep them out of the kitchen until you are completely done. Here I'm gonna show you once more how to shape them. And a fun fact about these buñuelos is that they are also called buñuelos de rodilla, which means knee buñuelos, as in knees and toes. Because ladies sit down in a chair, they use the tea towel over their knees and then they stretch them that way. Honestly, for me, my knees are so bony that probably will pierce the buñuelos and that wouldn't work out. So I find to use that a nice and even pan works way better for me. But hey, if you want to give it a try, by all means. So I'm gonna shut up and I'm gonna show you once more. And here I'll show you the second one, which turned out even better because now I had a better temperature in my oil, and these nice bubbles is exactly what you want. So let me go ahead and finish the rest of them.
And now they're ready to be enjoyed. What I like to do is crack them on top of a plate and then drizzle them with some of my syrup. Fancy, because why not? And don't forget to add some of those nice guava pieces. Oh my god, it smells so good. So excited. You would like to have your syrup warm, so you get the feeling of being outside in the fair or just at home, cozy, warm, getting ready for Christmas. And let's see. Mm. 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 They're so good. And here they come. There's nothing for you. So light, crunchy, sweet, warm. To me, this yells posada. You might need a babe to eat this because it's gonna get messy. Or just get messy. Well, not if you're wearing a nice shirt like I am, but well, I'm not gonna torture you looking at me eating this in a very messy way. But I do hope you make them. You trust me, you won't regret it. And if you do, you can see you have plenty to share with your friends. Just like this video. Please like, subscribe, and also be notified. And for more, follow me on the socials. ¡Feliz Navidad! You want some? Come over here. Ready? Up. Hey. Up. Eso. And the other one. Come here, Pinto. Up. Ha.